nature is not fair. Let us look at an analogy to observe this. Person A takes a pound of grain from person B. In this event, person A has done something morally wrong, however, has received a benefit because of this action, the benefit being an increased number of resources. This is contrasted by person B, who has done nothing morally wrong, but a negative event has befallen them despite that. This is unfair, as a person who has done something morally wrong should not receive benefits, nor should a person who's done something amoral receive detriments. And yet, nature plays out this way all the same. So how can we fix this? Well, we have now entered the role justice plays. Let me give you a pretty intuitive outline for it. If someone does something that is moral, good, they deserve a benefit. This is because morality is linked to society thriving, so it should be rewarded with a benefit. If someone does something that is immoral, they deserve a detriment. That's because immorality is bad for society and should be punished. If someone does something that is amoral, that is nothing at all, they deserve no benefit nor detriment, because they have not changed the status quo, so why should their status quo change? Unfortunately, we don't live in a fair world. Oftentimes, immoral actions lead to benefits. For example, if I stole $500 from you, that would be an immoral action, and yet, here I am with the benefit of $500.
Money, 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 money.
That completely destroys the cool diagram we just made. I did something bad and I got a benefit. In the same way, you did something amoral, you didn't do anything, and you got a detriment for it. That also ruins the diagram. Well, we can use two different kinds of justice to set things right. The first kind of justice is enacted on me, and that's retributive justice. Now, because I did something that was immoral, I deserve a detriment. This can be anything from prison time to paying a fine to anything else that is bad for me. The second kind of justice we're going to use is restorative justice, which is enacted on the victim. Because they did something that was amoral, nothing, they should have no change to the status quo, and so all we have to do is reinstate that status quo. This can be simply done by just giving them back their $500.
Theological Dissent is a college student majoring in psychology and sociology, and he is a content creator who recently started his YouTube journey. His video topics cover his analysis on religion, political, and sociological issues that focus on psychological behavior, moral versus immoral actions, justice versus injustice, and much more. Theological's first video was back in February of 2024, with the title being The Most Dangerous Doctrine, Age of Accountability.
Peak of today is commonly referred to as the Age of Accountability. Before we can begin, we must ask what the theory of the Age of Accountability is. The Age of Accountability states that if a person dies while they are too young to understand God and how to be saved, God will not send them to hell. The reason to believe this is usually stated that it would be unfair for God to send a child to hell, as they simply were not able to grow old enough to be saved. The typical age for this ranged anywhere from 2 to 20 years old, but for this video we will be strictly talking about those that die before the age of 2. It is easy to see why this theory is appealing. After all, many people have serious moral convictions that tells them innately that a child going to hell is wrong, as they simply did not grow old enough to understand how to be saved.
His most recent video, All Aspects of Crime Explained, is where he breaks the ice about morality and immorality and breaks down what is criminology.
What is criminology? Well, criminology can be broken down into two parts. Crimin, which means crime, and ology, which means the study of. Put those two phrases together and you get crime, the study of. I don't know what that means, but that's the best I got. In reality, criminology is the study of crime and deviant behavior. It's a social science, like psychology or sociology. It's dedicated to the pursuit of understanding what crime is, how do we combat it, and why do people commit it. Criminology is interdisciplinary, which means it pulls from multiple different sciences and social sciences to create a holistic view of crime. Here are a couple fields now. Philosophy, to understand what crime is and how do you punish it. Economics, to understand how financial status influence individuals to commit crime. Let's say you live in a country where 1% of people own 99% of the wealth. I know that's a crazy hypothetical, it would never happen, but let's just pretend like it did. Individuals in these societies will probably grow to be bitter and envious of these people with all the wealth, and commit crime as ways to get back at them. Sociology, to understand how groups and societies influence individuals to commit crime.
Okay. I don't want to spoil too much, so stay tuned where me and Theological Dissent will discuss more about his view on modern society, his YouTube journey, and the future state of our world. Well, Theo, any last words before we get started?
Don't do crime. It's bad.
Hey there, Armor here, and welcome to a brand new Armavation conversation. Today's conversation will be with a content creator who recently just started his new channel focused on psychological and sociological topics. Everyone, give a big welcome to Theological Dissent.
Oh, thank you so much. That means so much to me.
Okay, so thanks, Theo, for taking the time to be here and share your voice for this conversation. I truly appreciate it because you didn't have to contact me and say, hey, let's I want to have a conversation about this, but you're here.
No, this sounds so fun. I've been looking at your channel a lot. It looks like a lot of fun stuff. I've been going through like all your videos.
Oh, really? Yeah,
I
there's all
yeah,
types of
I love
people.
just exactly, and they're all like different ideas. I don't know. It's really cool what you're doing. I think.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
so before we get into our main topic, I want to learn more about your journey, and for people that don't even know who you are, just to learn a little bit more about you. So I know before like when we were first talking and everything, you mentioned to me that you were 18 and you were in college, right? And
Yep.
your major is psychology, but your minor is sociology.
Right.
So how has your college experience been so far, and like what life lessons are
Ooh.
you learning?
It's so fun. So I actually started doing like concurrent college when I was in like a sophomore
Right.
or junior. Sorry, I was junior, right?
Mhm.
And so I went in with how many was it? 42 credit hours. So I went in with a lot already, but
Mhm.
I was majorly just doing psychology, getting my minor in sociology, and I'm also doing biomedical engineering as well.
Wow.
Um, Yep. So that's definitely the worst part of it. I don't like biomedical, but I need it for grad school. So uh, I'm pretty much going to only be in undergraduate school for like 2 years, 2.5 years maybe, and I have to write like a full thesis paper and everything to get into grad school. So that's going to be kind of nerve-wracking, but I'm excited to get to grad school and start doing some real research.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, congrats to you because that's not easy. Like, my college experience was very minor, but do what's best for you. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah.
wish I could get as little as I could, but unfortunately with grad school they're not letting me happen. So
All
it's
right.
so
Yeah,
sad.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but how's how, like I always wonder this because I haven't had experience in a university, like, I guess, atmosphere. How is it like there? Like,
Okay.
are you getting along with people and stuff there?
Oh, it's so different from high school.
Mhm.
So I'm actually like still I'm not in high school anymore, but like I was in high school fall semester. So I just started college like this semester,
Right.
and it is so weird.
Mhm.
Um, it feels much more like everyone refuses to talk to each other, right? Like there's no
Mhm.
communication at all. It's really hard to make friends. After like a couple classes, you'll start like knowing the same people and talking to them, but like as opposed to high school, like it's so different, and like nobody wants to like make friends there. It feels like it's weird.
It probably feels like people are stressed out about all the money
Oh
they
yeah.
took out to pay for college.
It's so true. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's what I'm thinking about too, honestly. Like 24/7. It's like if I fail this class, like I guess that's it for me. I'm done.
I feel like everyone's going through their ramen noodles days.
Hey,
So,
I swear to God, I have a drawer full of like ramen noodle right now. All right,
what
like I
flavors
have
you
it right
got?
here. Chicken. I know
Oh
it's very
yes,
basic, but
it works. Add some
ex-
seasoning in there. All
oh,
types
we
of
can't
stuff.
afford seasoning here. We can't
Oh,
afford that. Okay, maybe some
oh,
salt every
oh.
once in a while,
Okay.
but
Well, at least you have something going down your stomach. Okay.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, focus on that. Yeah.
So let me ask you, how do you plan to use your major to benefit your goals in life? As
Oh,
you gain more
so
experience.
yeah, I really want to do neuroscience research as much as I can. Well, obviously the main topic about we're talking about today is moral bioenhancement.
Mhm.
But more than that, like just mental health as a whole.
Mhm.
I wanted to become a psychiatrist before, but then I looked more into psychiatry. I met with a lot of psychiatrists myself, and they all kind of said like, it's just like really just a crapshoot, and like if it works or not.
Right.
It doesn't really seem as scientific as because we're just like putting random chemicals into people and hoping it works, and like of course like that's what we got now. I'm not gonna like diss that, but at the same time, it just isn't what it should be. And
Mhm.
I think neuroscience and neurological like surgeries are where it's going to eventually go to when it comes to mental health help, right?
Right.
If you look at like depression with like people with poor serotonin receptors in their
Mhm.
brain, I don't think psychiatry is the one that's going to absolutely solve that. I think it's neuroscience.
Right. Mm. Yeah. Wow.
So
That's interesting.
y- yeah, exactly. It was disappointing to find out that psychiatry wasn't like as good as I thought it was, but I'm excited to start neuroscience. I'm excited to like start like do research
Mm-hmm.
and help people with mental health. I really want to focus on schizophrenia because I find that very fascinating on how like dopamine affects the brain in that kind of way.
Right. Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like that hard of a fix in my like, you know, like mind, but of course it in
Mm-hmm.
reality it's going to be much more difficult.
Yeah, I don't know if you I had it's probably like towards the way beginning of my channel, but I interviewed someone
Mm,
who has uh he has schizophrenia and his name is Dragon After Dark. So like if you want,
okay, hold up. Yeah,
if
that's
you
that
look
sounds
back at
awesome.
that one, he gave a lot of good details and it was very informative, and I was glad that he was able to share his experience because a lot of people aren't aware of like what really goes on, it's behind the mindset of someone who has schizophrenia. So yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
I think there's definitely like a lot of like stereotypes with schizophrenia, like of how
Right.
it works. It's
Right.
like, well,
Right.
no, that's not at all.
Right. People
Yeah,
just think it's like
it's
some paranormal activity movie. Like it's like no.
right. No, that's definitely what it is. Like ghosts, obviously. Duh, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's insane, but
Right. So what
uh,
advice would you give to high school students who want to go into the same major as you, into
oh my God.
psychology?
Into psychology,
Mhm.
um, number one, if you're in high school, do as many concurrent classes as you can. I maxed out credits at 18 per year, and then I also did some CLEP exams, which made me 21 per year, so I got to 42.
Mhm.
So get as many concurrent classes as you can under your belt, like Comp 1, Comp 2, history, government, those kinds of basics. And
Okay.
also just take intro to psychology. What other? I think just make sure you're passionate about it. If you're passionate about it, then it's not even gonna be a challenge. You're gonna love it. I love my psych classes. They're so fun.
Mhm.
But if I didn't like them, then yeah, I wouldn't be able to like actually do them. So find a niche area as well that you're passionate about. Don't just do psychology because that's not like tangible to be passionate about. But if you're interested in like schizophrenia, like you said,
Mhm.
or any other field about psychology, like how to raise a kid, right? How do
Mhm.
I properly raise a kid? How do I do that, right? How does the brain like in evolution? How to have that happen? Whatever. Find a niche field that you like, focus on that, and do outside research as well. I love researching stuff. I love just like learning as much as I can about my specific field, and
Mhm.
so definitely find that thing that like clicks for you, and as soon as that happens, then just work as hard in that as you can.
Right, definitely. Well said. But let me ask you, what's the coolest thing you have done so far in your college classes, like as far as experimentation, like, like,
Ooh,
you know.
so I got a research grant. I got my proper research started next semester, so I'm excited for that. I think I know a couple of the professors that I'll be working under, so I'm really excited for that.
Mhm.
Um, Most excited thing I've done. I don't know. Really, right now, where I'm at is just discussions, like the one we're having. Right, I have
Right.
a lot of
Mhm.
friends that I've met in college that are just absolute geniuses. Like I got an anthropology major I know, another psych major I know, a lot of different majors that are just like so fascinating to talk to because they know so much and they're so
Mhm.
passionate about their work. And so I think like more than anything, more than just applications and like what you learn, meeting new people that like are passionate like you are is also so rejuvenating for me at least.
Right. And definitely having people that, are is in the same boat as you, and being able
Mhm,
to
yeah,
bounce off ideas with each other, that's very helpful. Yeah.
absolutely. Yep, I
Yeah.
agree with that.
So let's get
Um,
into you wanting to start your YouTube channel and becoming a content creator, right?
sure.
So what made you want to start a YouTube channel? What made you want to become a content creator and make videos? Like what was the spark in your brain? It was like
Mm.
I want to do this.
Yeah, so I've been like a hardcore Christian like for most of my life.
Mhm.
And around 10th grade, so 2 years ago, which is crazy to think about, I started thinking more about like Christianity, started to piece together some things. And so my first two videos, my anti-natalist argument, and then my other one, which is on what is that one on? I think it's Age of Accountability.
Mhm.
These are like theological topics that are very important, and I had very as you can tell from the channel name, dissenting opinions on them,
Mhm. Yep.
opinions that go much against like core Christian beliefs, and so I wrote essays on them. I would talk to my friends, I would talk to pastors about them, I would debate with them, get better and better, and then I just kind of never did anything with them. And I realized that these essays, while I have them, nobody wants to read essays. Nobody wants to like for me to send them the PDF and be like, okay, read this essay,
Of
right?
course.
Exactly. Unfortunately, it'd be so cool.
It would,
So
yeah.
yeah. So it started off as like, okay, I kind of want people to like actually consume my ideas better. And how do I do that? I guess I'll just make more like video formatting. And I had a friend I was talking to, and they're like, well, you're making the videos already, might as well post them. I was like, okay, yeah, sounds good. So my first 3 or 2 videos I have up on my channel right now are all just the essays I wrote back in 10th grade. Like they're nothing new. And as I go forward, I'll be talking more about like theology.
Mm-hmm.
The point of the channel is really like I think there's a lot of Christian channels that are very hardcore into like orthodox beliefs, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
really like want to stray away from that. And there's also a lot of like atheist channels on YouTube that are like, oh, I hate Christians, or this is why Christians are stupid, which I completely understand.
Mm-hmm.
The point of this channel is like kind of the combination of both, where like I want to critique Christianity, I want to critique their belief system, but then also say like this doesn't make it like not true, right? You don't have to go away from the faith. It just means whatever assumptions you're making about the faith already, about like infallibility of Christ or something like that, is
Right.
just not actually true, right?
Mm-hmm. So, with you coming up, do you feel like it's been easy to come up with ideas because like you in college with your major, you feel like it's easier to
Mhm.
come up with video ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. I got so many ideas and I got like zero time to edit. So that's really my like hang up right now is editing stuff. It's just so
Right.
boring to me.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
it's
I
tough.
got
It,
yeah.
yeah. So you feel like you have a good work life balance as far as like handling
Ooh,
your YouTube channel alongside
I
with
got a
your
good
hobbies?
work-life balance. Yeah, I
Okay.
don't think a work-life sleep balance though. Like
Oh yeah, that's the
the three
hardest.
things, one of them is always costing. So I'll go to school, for whatever. I'll get up at 7, then come back at like 5, right? And then I'll
Right.
start editing, and then I'll go to bed like, 3 in the morning. And it's like, okay, well, I just got 4 hours of sleep, for
Jeez.
5 days a week. That's exactly.
Oh my
So it's like
gosh.
I gotta figure that out still. But right now I feel pretty good about everything else.
Do you have anything like I mean, do you have like any goals to like help you get better sleep? Because I know that's the hardest thing for college students too. But
Yeah. Um, I Not really. It's just like if I'm functioning well, if I sleep too much, I just don't feel well, and if I sleep too little, then I can't drive well. So if I can drive well and I can function well, then we're solid, right?
right, yeah, yeah, yep, you're good. Yeah. So, um, what do you hope to for people to take away from your videos?
Ooh, I just want them to like rethink their faith because I think a lot of times there's this idea of like doubt springs up, and it's like either doubt is bad, you're not allowed to doubt Christianity, which I think is wrong, or well, I guess I doubt it, so it can't be true at all. I got to throw it away, right? And I just don't
Mm-hmm.
think either of those things are true. So I want to introduce people into more um, different opinions on Christianity and how different views, and to really force them into a position where they have to either have to defend Christianity, which I think grows their faith, or they
Mm-hmm.
leave Christianity, which, as sad as that is, at least their worldview is intact.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I saw like all your videos and I was like, wow. Like
Really?
I
Okay.
was very impressed because like it kind of like opened something new into my mindset because I haven't even thought of the idea of like what you were talking about with immoral, amoral, and moral like
Yeah.
people and so I was like, wow, I haven't even thought about it. Like there's good versus bad and stuff like that, but the way you word
Right.
it and share your examples, I was like, wow, this is
Oh, thank you.
interesting.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely like such a hard because like I was at a point in my life where I was like, well, this isn't fair, and I was like, what do you mean? What do I mean like fair, right? How do I
You're
even define that? And so it
right.
took me a while to like get those kind of definitions in place. But once I have that, like,
Hmm.
I just love using those to further expand it.
Right. So let's transition into our main topic here, moral
Right.
bio enhancement. So
Yep.
you mentioned you wanted to talk about it. So, like I
Right.
mentioned, you're the expert here, but let me just start off with this. So, based on the Google definition, moral bio enhancement is a biological modification or intervention which makes moral behavior more likely. There are a number of ways that could potentially be achieved, including pharmaceuticals, non-invasive brain stimulation, or genetic engineering. Can you break
Right.
down in your own words what is moral bioenhancement?
Right. So it's such a big word, right? It sounds cool, but it's really not that cool.
Yeah.
So pretty much what it is I'm trying to simplify, and then we can expand more on it. People are bad sometimes, right?
Yep.
We know this. And why are people bad? Because they're incentivized to be bad with dopamine, right? Like when I steal a chocolate bar from a candy store, I get dopamine hits when I eat the chocolate bar, right? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense,
Yep.
right? And so what if we got rid of that dopamine hit when I steal something, right? Then
Mm.
I wouldn't steal something anymore, right? There'd be more theft. Now, of course, it's way more complicated than that, right? We can't just like lobotomize someone and be like, okay, see, we solved crime, right?
Right, right.
Right.
That'd be
So
scary.
yeah. So there's a lot of like how do we go about this? How do we even perform this? Is it possible even? And if it is possible, the arguments I have a lot are, is it ethical? Many
Mm,
people, and I completely understand this position, think it's highly unethical to change someone's brain so that they are better people. That sounds like 1984 dystopian stuff, right? Like,
right.
oh, we gotta fix everybody to make them better. I
Mm-hmm.
completely understand that position.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow. Yes. Definitely like because when I first heard the word, I was like, okay, this is it sounds wordy, but
yeah.
I'm like when I watched your videos once again, I was like, okay, now this kind of makes sense a little more, like when you
Mhm.
talk like your content. But okay, so let me ask you, why is moral enhancement important to you?
To me,
Mm-hmm.
so I guess I'll talk like really what spring up was like last semester. I was taking philosophy and biology
Mm-hmm.
in the same semester, and that's always going to have interesting effects. And I
Mm-hmm.
was looking about biology. I was like, okay, this is how evolution kind of works. If we believe in evolution, right,
Mm-hmm.
we assume that people evolved to be selfish, right, and so there's part of their brain that makes them selfish.
Mm-hmm.
And then philosophy's really started making me think about more abstract concepts of like evil, good. How do we prevent evil from happening?
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of like one night, it just kind of hit me like, okay, what if we changed the brain so that they were no longer incentivized to be selfish, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know like the most fundamental thing, like racism, right? That
Right.
comes from selfishness. That comes from tribalism, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think like I talk to sociology majors a lot because I find them I love talking to them, but a lot of what they argue is social change, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
just don't think social change, no matter how much we change society to say like racism is bad, people will still be biologically programmed to be racist. Um, I think obviously you can fight against it. So like, it's like, oh guys, I can't help myself to be
Right. Of
racist, right?
course.
But it's
Yes.
still like you're born like a human being and you're just gonna grow up and be like, okay, these people are different from me and I
Mm-hmm.
don't like them, right?
Yeah.
And it's just in your brain. And so if we can get rid of that part, and if we can get rid of the part that says like another great example is like communism, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've always been always against communism. It's dumb. It doesn't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But why doesn't it work? Selfishness. Once again, we can't share our resources because we're selfish creatures by nature, right? So if
Right.
we can become not selfish creatures, then we could absolutely live in a communist society, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think it extends to almost every single immoral and crime that happens is just because of selfishness, right? Because we put our needs above others. And so
Mm-hmm.
really just that kind of all cemented into like, okay, what if we just change the brain, right? What if we
Mm-hmm.
change them to be not selfish? And I'll be honest, like in my personal life, I've just experienced a lot of pain from other people that are just
Right.
acting in selfish manners, right?
Mm-hmm.
I see that a lot. In society, I feel like that's what is making everything go so downhill. I think that's what making us like on the verge of extinction, right? This idea of
Mm-hmm.
like, well, if my country can't prosper, I guess I'll just nuke every other country, or make bio weapons, right?
Mm-hmm.
That will kill humanity, or all kinds of other extinction events that is man-made, right? I think that all
Mm-hmm.
comes from selfishness, right?
Mm-hmm. And it seems like you know what I got, like part of it of moral bio enhancement being important to you is because you're naturally curious about the what ifs, because from your experience you've maybe dealt with people or seen people act in a more immoral way, and you're like, okay,
Right.
this is not it. Why is this happening? Why are they getting away with this? Like how
Yeah.
can we make the world better from that aspect?
Right. I
Mhm.
absolutely agree with that. I think the other part is like there was a definite point in my life where I was like I hated them, where I was like, how dare they, But then it was like, do they even like control that? Like to some extent, I think they are in control of their own actions, but like why are they
Mhm.
born with like say like this mental illness or like all kinds of other factors that contribute to how they act, right?
Mhm.
And so even though I hate them, it's like, do I have a right to hate them, or do I just have a right to hate the fact that their biology is different in a negative way, and all of biology is broken in that kind of way?
Mhm.
Um, and another part of that really definitely is contributing to it is I wouldn't say like I left the faith, right? I still consider myself kind of a Christian, right?
Mhm.
But definitely there's that falling out period. It was like, okay, the orthodox beliefs, the doctrines that I always hold to aren't
Mhm.
necessarily true in my eyes anymore.
Right.
And so I don't know if the idea of heaven even exists. I don't even know if the idea of hell exists, right? These
Mhm.
ideas I can't say absolutely. And so with that, we must kind of say, okay, well, if we don't know heaven exists, then we must make our own kind of heaven, right?
Mhm.
We must make a place that people don't die anymore, and like immorality is a thing of a past, right? And
Right.
so I think a lot of people are working hard to solve the problem of death, right? There's a lot of
Mhm.
like science I'm seeing that's like extending people's lives, maybe even like curing their their aging process, right? I think that's great, but I think that the thing we have to target as well is immorality, um, making sure people no longer have incentive to act in bad ways that are harmful to themselves and others.
And based on like what you just said there, I just started thinking about like I don't know why I just started thinking about Batman's and Joker's relationship, and it's like because
It's so true. Yeah.
it's like
No, I see what you're saying.
Batman wants to get rid of Joker because of what he's doing to hurt people. And the Joker's
Hmm.
like, listen, I've been hurt by people. I used to be the good guy. I was the underdog, but I've been hurt so
Hmm.
much that it made me go internally insane. And so now that I'm bad, now people care all of a sudden, right? And then
Yeah, yeah.
and then Batman's like, well, Joker told Batman in a way it's like you're just like me because you wanna harm me because of the harm I'm doing. So like, what does that make you if you wanna harm me as well? So it's like it's crazy, but
Mhm.
but
Yeah, there's definitely this idea, like, how do we even enact justice, right? Like, the difference
mhm
between justice and revenge,
right
I definitely agree with that.
mhm
And another way, like, I think you're right, like, there are these people like the Joker, right, in society where, they just wanna cause harm, right?
mhm
I would say, like, school shooters or terrorists are probably the best examples of that, and while terrorists, I would say, some of them you can attribute to, like, religious faiths,
mhm
right? Not all of them, definitely, but some of them. Shooters are
mhm
mass shooters, that is, are almost always just incredibly broken people
mhm
who are they don't really want anything anymore. They just
mhm
want to cause pain,
mhm
not because it will make them happy, but because like they think that will, you know, they felt pain and so they can cause other pains. I think diving into like criminology and like school
mhm
shooter psychology is always fascinating to me,
mhm
um, because it's just like how do we help these people? How do we prevent this from happening? Because obviously this isn't like if I'm suffering, right?
yeah
Nothing is better because I go shoot other people, right? I don't get dopamine hits from doing that. I don't become happy. And
mhm
so like it's completely like illogical thing to do that and yet people still do it.
right
And so I think if we had better understanding of like how to prevent that, how to provide support to these people,
mhm
um,
right.
we could definitely see like people go away from that kind of method.
Why do you think it's important for people to have morals?
Morals? I guess it's kind of just like, do we think happiness is good? Is happiness desirable?
Hmm.
And if it is desirable, if we assume that's true, then it just makes mathematical sense that we should try to make everyone as happy as possible. The utilitarian framework, right?
Mhm.
Um, Otherwise, I just think it's. I think society can only evolve if we focus on like moral truths, right? Like, okay, we should do this, we have to do this, right? If we don't have to
Mhm.
do anything, then we don't do anything, and nothing happens, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which I
Yeah.
don't know if we could say like is bad, right? It's
Mhm.
hard to like argue like, oh, that's bad when you don't really have like a absolute objective framework. But if we are to assume that like we want to be happy, then we must work for that goal to become happy one day, right?
Right. Yeah. So do you think, like, in your opinion, do you think we need to enhance like people's mindset to become more moral or be at least become more
Yeah.
aware of it, or should we just let nature take its course?
I think if nature takes its course, I think we're going to see the end of this like world. As pessimistic
Right.
as that
Right.
is, I just
Right.
don't think. I think so. Like nuclear weapons, I don't think is what's going to end us, right? Because I think we all have like we see this with like the Russian, right, who like
Mhm.
refused to launch nuclear weapons at America, right? Like
Mhm.
despite all the evidence that there was nuclear weapons going to Russia, he still said, "No, I'm not going to do that." I
Mhm.
think at our core, we're still going to be like, it doesn't matter if our society dies off, we're going to let other societies live on. What I
Mhm.
do think a concern is bioweapons, because I
Mhm.
think bioweapons is like uh, this sounds conspiracy theorist. I'm not drawing a parallel, but like look at like COVID-19, right?
Mhm.
If like obviously we can't control pathogens, right? And
Right.
so if we make genetically modified pathogens that are like not like antibiotics resistant, right?
Mhm.
Um, then we have bacteria that is incredibly dangerous to humanity and we can't control, right? Nuclear weapons we can't control. We press
Right.
buttons, they launch. It's that simple, right?
Mhm.
Bioweapons are a creature. They're its own like being. And so how do we control that? And I think humans are so dumb sometimes that they think they can control it, right? Well, we
Mhm.
can, genetically modify them so we are in power, but that just won't happen.
Mhm.
And so what I think is inevitable is there's going to be a chemical leak, um, and there's going to be a bioweapons leak, or just on the battlefield, there's going to be one that's released, and it's just going to need to either kill off humanity or really bring it down, right?
Right.
Dwindle down the population severely, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And I mean, I feel like a part of it too is like just the ego, I have money,
yep.
power, connections, I could do what I want. Who are you?
Right,
So,
exactly. And the other thing is like I have to keep this, right? Like I have to keep my money, I have to keep my power, and so I have to keep on doing some more insane unethical things to do that. It's like, well, you ban bioweapons, well, I guess I'll just that's the leg up I need, right, to keep my power. I guess I'll
mm-hmm.
just make bioweapons. It's like, no, we banned them for a reason, you don't understand. But
Right. Definitely. So, in your opinion, what characteristics or traits would a person who has morals have?
whereas more, I just think altruism. I think the golden rule is like as it's found across societies.
Mm-hmm.
Every single society recognizes it, like Buddhism, Islam, Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
all over the world. People recognize that putting others' needs before your own
Mm-hmm.
is the most important moral principle, right? If
Mm-hmm.
everybody did that, like arbitrarily, if everyone did that, then we would live in a society that really wouldn't have any problems anymore. Because why would I steal? Because I want something? Well, it doesn't really matter what I want when it matters what everyone else wants, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
if we put everyone else's needs over our own, um, I think that's the most moral you can be. Now, I think that's impossible because in a current way, because we're just selfish creatures. We can never be truly altruistic. Whenever we do altruistic acts, like I'm going to give this person money, it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to do that without thinking like, well, how will this come back and benefit me? Well, if I give this homeless person money, then maybe I'll create a society where when I'm homeless, they'll give me money, right? And so
Yeah.
like I think every single idea of like altruism is impossible to enact now as we're just selfish creatures. But maybe if we change our brains so that we get dopamine hits from altruism instead of selfishness, then we'll become altruistic creatures.
Okay. That's interesting you say that because I wanted to ask you this: do you think the world is more like evil or good? Like,
Ooh, yeah.
do you think there's a spiritual war going on between good and evil? And who do you think is winning or losing? Like,
Mm.
yeah.
That's such a good question. Obviously, if you act like as the modern day Christian, I'm sure they will say like evil's winning, right? Like, oh no,
Mhm.
LGBT rights is high. That's terrible. Like prostitution's high or whatever. So, in my opinion, I tend to think we're like at a good place, right? I think we're actually evolved from what we were.
Oh, okay.
Like if you look around, I think racism is down. Like slavery doesn't exist anymore. I think that's like huge accomplishment for humanity. Like, good job.
Right.
Pat ourselves on the back for that one because that was apparently hard to do.
Mhm.
I would say that we're more moral now than we've ever been. I know lots of people disagree with me because I've heard like the arguments of like we now have more dangerous weapons, we now have the potential for more harm, and I absolutely
Mhm.
understand that. I just think from a fundamental level, like almost everybody understands that other people are people, right? They
Right.
understand that there's no such thing as like and we all hate harm. The other
Mhm.
thing I think is interesting is a societal switch where we praise the minorities rather than the majorities, right? I was talking to
Mhm.
someone about this the other day, where like when it comes down to it, if anyone's attacking a minority, we'll probably instantly defend the minority, even if we like there's really no reason to. And if
Okay.
anyone's attacking the majority, we'll probably not defend it because of the majority. Which you could argue that's problematic in some cases, and absolutely it is. But I think it's much better than the alternative, which we defend the majority all the time and attack minorities, right?
Uh huh.
Um, so from that landscape, I think we are more moral now than probably we've ever been, and
Okay.
hopefully that'll just continue to evolve.
Okay. And as far as like with people who are more immoral versus people who are more moral, what are your thoughts about people who may have a personality disorder, so narcissism
Mm,
or you
yeah,
know how people say sociopath or psychopath, like people that have those chemical imbalances that they they can control their decisions but they
yeah.
can't, and they tend
They
to
just don't have
do
the incentive not to, right?
right, they
Yeah.
tend to do immoral things. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, can they be forgiven because sometimes they can't necessarily control that because of how their brain works, or what do you think?
Yeah, so I know someone actually with antisocial personality disorder,
Okay.
which is usually categorized by like very low empathy,
Mhm.
right? I think empathy definitely is in place to help us recognize other people as people like us, right? Like I can think, I can dream, I can do all these stuff, and everyone else can do that too. Everyone's like me. Wow. And so that empathy definitely helps us like subvert like doing immoral things. I do think though that like and from my conversations with him, he still recognizes other people as like technically other people, right? Like he
Okay.
knows that as a fact they have DNA as well. They're still functioning humans as well.
Mhm.
Even if that empathy isn't in place, he can still recognize that aspect, and he can recognize that the pain they feel is. He doesn't really ever say the same, right? But he'll say like
Mhm.
he recognizes that they feel pain, right?
Mhm.
Um, in like some more sobering experiences, he'll talk about like how he sees other people as like more creatures, like animals, not like him. And
Mhm.
of course, that's incredibly like disturbing to hear. but
Right.
I also understand that a lot of it is his personality disorder, right? I
Mhm.
would argue that he's still able to fully understand that like society has agreed that what he has is a mental disorder. He's
Mhm.
not like better than everyone else. He's actually incredibly worse because he doesn't have empathy. And
Mhm.
so he's no longer like he doesn't think he's like allowed to like kill other people like a serial killer like Ted Bundy, right? He
Right.
doesn't think that like that's fine because everyone else isn't a really human being. He understands that like from a moral like from a sociological landscape, right? That
Yeah.
is wrong, and so he doesn't do it, right?
Mhm.
Um, he doesn't have the empathy, so he doesn't have like the guilt punishment. I think like in our society we often have that double-edged sword where like if we do something wrong, we will not only be punished by the criminal system, right? We'll go to jail, right?
Mhm.
And we'll also just feel guilty about it, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't have that guilty aspect, but he still recognizes that jail exists. So if he does something wrong, he'll still go to jail. Um,
Mm.
and so that really prevents him from doing immoral things. I think if we can't like say like, oh well, he killed like three people, but he's antisocial, so we'll forgive him, right? We still have to
Right.
punish him like everyone else. But
Mhm.
I do think it's important to like recognize that like the punishments maybe don't work as well as everyone else because if we just give them time to think, like they're not going to think about like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. They're going to think, how do I do this next time without like getting away with it, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Which really goes back into the moral bioenhancement where like I've talked to people about this is extremely disturbing, but like soldiers in war, right?
Mhm.
How do you make the perfect soldier? The first thing I would do is get rid of empathy, right?
Mm.
Um, and so because obviously empathy makes them human beings, and that makes them actually able to not want to kill the enemy, right?
Right.
And so the first thing you do in war is you like, especially with like World War II, we would talk about like the Germans as the Jerrys or the Japanese as the Japs, and like try to like dehumanize them so we didn't see them as like killing other humans, right?
Mhm.
And so if we could do that on like a biological level, that'd be fantastic. And
Mhm.
so when it comes to antisocial personality disorder, I say we just do the opposite, right?
Mhm.
And give them empathy. As hard as that would be, I don't know if that would be easy, but figure out
Yeah.
the empathy center and
Mhm.
try to instill that into them. And so they were more able to recognize other people as people.
Yeah, that's interesting. What you mentioned about designing the perfect soldier to take their
Uh-huh.
empathy out because that leads me to the next question about like do you kind of agree or kind of disagree with our world heading into like more of the AI kind of
Oh yeah.
atmosphere
I
because
think it's
yeah because
yeah, I think it's
that's the
incredibly
thing.
disturbing.
Yeah.
I think it's just so I think from a corporate level, I think it's like what every corporation wants, what every capitalist corporation wants, which is slaves, right? That's
Mhm.
what AI is.
Mhm.
It's a thing that we have determined is not really human, and so we can make them do whatever we want. We can make them work as much as they want. They don't need sleep, they don't need food, they don't need all these things. They're not humans. They don't
Mhm.
have human rights. But yet they're still as smart as humans, right?
Mhm.
And so I think from a corporate level, we should just as try our best to get that out of corporations. We don't want corporations getting slaves. That sucks.
Mhm.
What I do think is important is running the government at maximum efficiency, right? And so we can implement AI into the government as much as possible. I think that'd be great because obviously, like, I think the government should be, in theory, free. There should
Mhm.
be no like taxes. Shouldn't have to pay the government anything. It should just exist. However, obviously, we can't do that because it takes work, it takes materials, and takes people to do their jobs.
Right.
But if we can implement AI as much as possible into that system, then
Mhm.
we're fine, right?
Mhm.
Um, which it sounds like I'm trying to justify slavery with the government, right? Obviously, I
Yeah.
don't believe AI is actually humans, but I do think corporations still see them as like human replacements, and I think that's probably a problem.
Yeah, that's why I asked you that because when you mention about soldiers and like the perfect soldier and taking
Hmm.
out the empathy, like corporations may see, oh, instead of having these whiny employees that say they need to take leave, they're sick and stuff. Why don't we have some robots that will just do whatever we
Exactly.
want?
How dare they ask for leave? Actually, we'll replace them. Yeah, then we'll see. I agree with that. I think that's pretty
Yeah.
dystopian as well.
Right. Right.
Because it's just anti like we need to implement antitrust laws, right? We don't like monopolies. We don't like if price fixing, right?
Mhm.
There are capitalist systems that we just don't like because they're bad for consumers. I think
Mhm.
this is another one that's like it's just bad for the job market. If we like get the rich richer and the poor poorer, like who's happy then, right? Like
Right.
what kind of society we live in? So I think we should definitely like moderate as much as we can with when we implement AI.
Mhm. So let me ask you, what do you think are the pros and cons of moral bioenhancement?
Ooh, so pros like infinite pros, right? Like we
Mhm.
can perfect humanity. We can live in some kind of pseudo utopia where crime doesn't exist, immorality doesn't exist. We're all happy all the time, right?
Mhm.
Cons is it goes wrong, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you play with biology, and we've like, if we assume evolution's true, then we have spent like millions of years evolving from a single cell organism to what we are now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like you would assume that we are fine tuned in such a way that like messing with us in any way could have significant detriments, right?
Yeah.
And so, of course, just like saying like, okay, what if we just change everybody's brain? I'm sure that won't go wrong. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what the outcomes of that would be, and so that's why I always like hammer in like we have to test this, right? First
Right.
on like mice, we test it on mice, see if it works on mice. If it works on mice, we go to chimps. If it works on chimps, then we look for human volunteers. If they volunteer, we like have them in like closed societies, little cities, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Observe them there for like a couple years. I say a couple of years, couple centuries, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure nothing goes wrong. And if everything goes right, then we can start saying, okay, what do we implement this world right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, which would be great. But I think like it would be stupid for me to try to say that no, there's no way I make a mistake. There's no way anyone makes a mistake and this goes wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's such a number one, such a high possibility that this goes wrong, and number two, I also think, and this is someone like people argue against this all the time with this, and I think they're right, is it's so disturbing whenever we start talking about ethics and what's right and what's wrong on an
Yeah.
objective level, and we say that we have to implement this in everyone else, right? We have to say like, okay, well, we know this is right and this is wrong, so go ahead and like hardwire this into people's brain, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
know if we did this, say 100 years ago, right, we would be hardwiring to people's brains like the Jews are bad, gay people are bad, right? We'd be hardwiring those kind of ethics in people's brains. So obviously, ethics does evolve to more enlightened states, and so
Mm-hmm.
how are we supposed to like put morals in people's brains now if we don't allow ethics to evolve? It's like at what point do we put those morals in people's brains?
Right.
I think it's a good argument,
Mm-hmm.
and like of course my would just be golden rule altruism. That's all we'd be putting in people's brains. But
Mm-hmm.
I do agree that once we start like opening that door of like, okay, well we did altruism. Well, what if we just did this one too? Like that one's clearly bad too, obviously. So we just do this as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a concern, and I do agree. I
Yeah.
think that's going to happen regardless, though. Like I was saying, like that perfect soldier. I think
Mm-hmm.
we're going to see that on the battlefield pretty soon, where we see like
Yeah.
pseudo humans. We're not really sure if they're humans anymore because like they've been biologically engineered to a point that like their
Mm-hmm.
brain doesn't function like a human's. They don't have empathy like a human.
Yeah.
They're just designed for warfare.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to be like true regardless of if we do moral bioenhancement. So that's kind of why I always hammer in like if we're
Mm-hmm.
going to use bioenhancements at all, if we're going to use bioengineering at all, we're going to use like CRISPR, right? At all, let's
Yeah.
use it for good at least, right? Let's not make the soldiers that are freaks of nature, right?
Yeah, and based on what you said, that's interesting. You were just saying as far as testing moral bioenhancement into people, like you said, like testing it on mice and then chimps and stuff like that. Now, let me ask you: do you think it's moral to do experimental things, on animals before it
Right.
goes
I
out to the
think
public?
absolutely, yeah, to certain degrees, right? So like if we
Mhm.
are if I just take a mice and I show it food, and every single time that the mice gives food to another mouse. I'm
Mhm.
saying mice, it should be mouse.
Mhm.
Anyways, every single time that mouse gives food to another mouse, I like put a little bit of dopamine in its brain. I think it's
Mhm.
fine. We already do that all the time with experimentation.
Okay.
Now, if I do like live vivisections on mice, I think that's wrong, right? I
Mhm.
think like if I cut the mouse open and start like digging in its brain while it's still like fully conscious and
Mhm.
it's feeling a lot of pain, that's wrong.
Right.
But if I can avoid as much pain as possible while still doing experiments, of course, it's kind of like a gray area, but I definitely think like there are ways to do experimentation on animals ethically and
Yeah.
that aren't like abhorrent, right?
Mhm. It just all depends. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Just don't cross certain lines, right? Don't make it have extreme pain.
Mhm.
Don't make it like an actual freak of nature, like everything else. So as
Mhm.
long as we do that, I think we're probably operating in like the green.
Mhm. So bear with me here. I want to go back and talk a little bit about what you said in one of your videos that I found
Hmm.
interesting. Um, it was in your "Can We Have Fairness in an Unfair World" video.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
mentioned in a fair world,
world. Yeah,
a moral
that's fair.
person would receive good things, an immoral person receives bad, and then an amoral person receives nothing or a neutral outcome, right? So,
Right.
since
Exactly.
you mentioned nature can be unfair, um, in your opinion, do you feel like there is a spectrum, like a scale of good or a bad person,
I think so. Yeah, I think
or do you think it's more
yeah.
black and white?
I guess yeah, I would say that it's definitely spectrums. I think it's hard to judge. Like I don't believe in like objective how do I say this? I believe in situational ethics, right?
Mhm.
So I do think like lying is sometimes bad, sometimes good. I don't
Mhm.
believe in like the Christian doctrine that says like lying is always bad, right? There's never a good time. I think that extends to every action ever, right?
Yeah.
There is like this hard moral landscape to draw, but there is still one that like if everyone's suffering is bad, every not suffering is good, right?
Mm.
And so we're in the middle of it. And every action we do that brings people into not suffering, that's good. And every action we do that brings everyone closer to suffering, that's bad, right?
Yeah.
And so I definitely do think it's a hard spectrum, and of course, like it's impossible because we're not omniscient, right? We don't know every action. We can't say like if I do this, I know that this will bring net good to the world and net bad to the world. It's hard to say that, but I
Yeah.
think if we operate on like our limited knowledge that we do have, we can make moral actions. Um,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, cause I was like, some people may see the world like black and white, and then some people see like there's okay, there could be this bad person that still cares for their family. Like you think about like old criminal organizations, right? That
right.
like big wigs and stuff like that. They were hurting other people to gain power, but they would make sure they take care of their family because they care for their family and they want to provide for their family. So it's like.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely like a such a interesting part where like people just argue for like malicious people, right? Like I
Mhm.
don't think those people really exist. Like evil people, as we know it, like they
Mhm.
don't really exist. There aren't really people in society that just like want to cause harm, right?
Mm.
Except for, like I said before, like school shooters, right? Where they like are so broken to the point that like they don't even care about their own happiness. They
Mm.
just want to cause harm, right?
Mhm.
But I think for the most part, everyone in society is, even though they do evil actions, they are
Mhm.
doing them for their own happiness, right?
Yeah.
And so really, I think it's just like a matter of adopt the utilitarian framework, and once you do that, then your actions can start being more moral, right? Because
Yeah.
how would you do an immoral action then?
And then a lot goes into that too, like that spectrum, because some people have nothing to lose. They, like you said, they'll do whatever. And then there's
Mhm.
also some people who are taking substances, like taking drugs, or
Oh yeah,
that's a whole
absolutely. Yep.
different story because the mind is being manipulated. So, yeah.
I absolutely agree with that. I think that like
Mhm.
the problem with drugs, and like this is like I say drugs as like a all encompassing term because I feel like there's absolutely like substance drugs, but there's all kinds of other things that like gambling or
Mhm.
like having sex, right? Like those things like do give us such a high degree of dopamine that
Mhm.
it does rewire our brain so that we focus on that and that alone, right?
Mhm.
Um, I definitely think that like that's a huge problem, and I hope to fix it.
Yeah.
With neuroscience research, I think that that would be possible to like figure out how to prevent that kind of that dopamine cap and that dependency on those things, right?
Right, right. So, if a person, let me move on to this question. If a
Yeah,
person were to tell you everything happens for a reason, regardless of what, good or bad happens to an immoral or moral person, do you believe that what they're saying is accurate?
everything happens like almost like a deistic
Mm-hmm.
part where like God is making everything happen for a reason.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yeah,
Yeah, like everything.
I guess it would really depend on what reason it is, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
like if we accept like Christian's God, then everything happens for a reason, but that reason is like it talks about in this in like Romans 9, where like
Mm-hmm.
why do people go to hell, right? And it says like, well, people go to hell because God needs to show His justice. He needs to show His glory to the utmost, and so to do that, He needs to send some to heaven and some to hell. Um, and like that's where I kind of like have a problem with. It's like, yeah, maybe everything happens for a reason, but what if this reason is bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like how do I determine like badness and goodness is another question, but really I just see it as like, okay, well, everyone's suffering is bad. If the majority of people are suffering, that's also bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
I do understand like this everything happens for a reason. I think that's a great, like I hope that's true because that'd be awesome, right? Like if
Mm-hmm.
like everything I went through isn't just unnecessary, right? Like all the pain that like we've gone through isn't like, oh well, it just kind of happened, bummer, right? Like if there's actually a good reason for it, like that'd be great.
Yeah.
I just have yet to see like actual proof of that.
Yeah. True. Yeah. So also in your video, you mentioned that justice can help make the world fair in an unfair
Right.
world. However, you said we also live in a broken world, so justice would need somehow like certain laws to kind of manipulate certain outcomes. So
Yeah.
why do you believe this is accurate, and like what's a real world example you may have to like help others understand your point?
That's a good question. So like I think justice, like I said, like manipulates the unfair world into a fair world. We can change stuff from like being um being like so if like I used in the video, like the example of like I steal something from someone else, right? Person
Mm-hmm.
A steals something from person B. If I just give back the pound of grain to person B, that is like technically justice. You would think that, but
Mm-hmm.
the problem is there's so many more vectors and factors at play here.
Right.
The truth is that the like I say this traumatizing, which might sound dumb, but like to a certain extent, like being stolen from can have some traumatizing effects. But like at all kinds of other cases, right? Like if someone attacks me and tries to kill me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can make sure they're in perfect health again, right? And
Mm-hmm.
fix their body. But at the point right now, we don't have a justice in place that like fixes their mental brokenness, right? Like the
Right.
mental harm of dead. So
Mm-hmm.
something I just had happen is like one of my friend's friend, right, roommate, was
Mm-hmm.
attacked by her boyfriend, right, with a
Mm-hmm.
hammer,
Mm.
and she's in jail now, right? Obviously, she's getting her medical bills paid for, so she is like physically going to be okay, right?
Right.
And that's justice. However, at the same point, she's going to live with that traumatizing experience for the rest of her life, right? And
Right.
that will affect everything. And so I think right now we just don't have the technology to act retributively
Mm-hmm.
and give people back what they really deserve, which is like everything status quo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think she will now fully be affected for the rest of her life, and so I think one day maybe justice will be able to undo those traumatizing effects that we have,
Mm-hmm.
just not right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And when you mentioned that too, like as far as like crime and people doing bad things to other people, I started thinking about RoboCop. I don't know if you saw that movie.
No, yeah, actually, yeah,
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
example, yeah,
But you know how he was going around and like he was like the criminals were like still trying to think they're all big and bad, and then he's
right.
like because of his AI and his machinery he's able to get an accurate like shot at the character of the bad guy and stop him or whatever. And it's like
Hmm.
when we go back to what you mentioned about the perfect soldier and stuff, it's like it's going to be interesting to see how like laws, justice, and crime is handled when you have these robotic cops and like drones and all this
Oh
stuff
yeah,
like being in place to take care of that in our society. So yeah.
I think it's gonna be really hard to like. I've talked about this before, like AI judges, right?
Mhm.
What would that look like? I just think like that's gonna be hard to implement because like so much of judges is like empathy, like
Mhm.
basic empathy, right?
Right.
And we can't really program that into robots, and so how will that look, right?
I could tell you
I,
how it will
I,
sound. You have been served.
yeah, true. That'd be awesome, actually. Imagine like you get like 3 consecutive life sentences from a robot. That'd be
Oh my
so upset.
gosh.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's like there's this dream of like where robots can fix everything because like judges have bias, right?
Mhm.
How you dress, what you look like. Unfortunately, in America, your race, right? Like they do have bias, right?
Mhm.
Um, but if we can make a robot, like boom, bias removed, right? But
Mhm.
unfortunately, some of that bias, which is the bias of humanity, right, is good. Empathy is good, and
Mhm.
so if we can't program that into a robot, like it's going to be a pretty harsh society we live in then, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yep. I mean, time will tell. Yeah.
Mhm. I
So,
I hope
yeah.
Kelvin will like prove me opposite, right?
Oh, right. So, do you think people who are more spiritual or religious tend to be moral or want to be moral? Why or why
Ooh,
not?
yeah. I actually wrote the like a essay on this, like this idea of like even if religion is false, I still kind of lean on the idea that it's good for society,
Okay.
right? Frederick Nietzsche talks about this in his book where it's like religion, like he usually concedes that religion is now pointless, but he does allow for the idea that like religion at a time served a purpose, and I agree with that. I think um, objective moral standards that are outlined in texts, right? Sacred
Mhm.
texts are good, right? We no
Mhm.
longer have to question like what is good, what is bad all the time. Certain punishments for things like, hey, if you do this, this will happen to you in the afterlife. That's also good. Because, like I said before, we live in an unfair world, and so like if I steal something, there's a good chance I just get away with it, right? Like
Mhm.
nothing's gonna happen to me. That sucks. And so if I
Yeah.
tell someone, hey, if you steal something, you might get away with it now, but like, oh, you're gonna see in the future, like it's gonna come back to haunt you. That's
Mhm.
good as well. Even if it's a lie, it's
Yeah.
kind of a lie for good, right? I
Mhm.
think it also gives people something really important, which is hope, right? Like no matter how bad things are here, you're
Mhm.
gonna die and go to a world that's perfect, right? And you can enjoy it then, right?
Mm. Yeah.
That's good. And so I think all these things like are just good for people. And I would say probably people that aren't religious are more moral to some degree. It depends on like if we've changed, right? Like so
Yeah.
100 years ago, 200 years ago, they were technically more moral by like society's landscape. But now, like as we enter the modern age where um we recognize that hey, wait a second, like gay rights are like maybe okay, hold up. I
Mhm.
don't know if like we can argue they're more moral in that regard, but I would say overall they're just more selfish people. They care more about other people because like they
Mhm.
they have an incentive to, right? And I think that's the
Mhm.
most important is we have if we give people an incentive to care about people and to do good things, then they're gonna do good things, right?
Right.
And so I definitely think religion is good in that regard. Now, of course, like there's definitely negatives in religion. We can talk about that too, but I do
Mhm.
think like the idea that like rejecting religion is like the world's worst evil, as like the irreprehensible things, I
Mhm.
just think is false. I think it's has a lot of good it can provide, maybe some bad too, but a lot of good. And
Mhm.
even if it's false, we should also recognize the good it provides, right?
Yeah. And would you say the same for like more spiritual people who are like into
Oh yeah,
meditation, nature, and like
yep.
frequency and vibration and all that?
I think that's great as well.
Mhm.
Like denying kind of like orthodox beliefs and standard texts, I think is great to try to argue like, hey, I don't need the Quran, I don't need the Torah, the Tanakh, or anything to be spiritual, right? I think
Mhm.
that's good too, right? Recognizing that there's a spiritual aspect to the world
Mhm.
and trying to kind of agree on like basic human principles. I see most spiritual people agree on like altruism, the golden rule, right? Like these kind of
Mhm.
moral principles, which I think is great.
Mhm.
I would also agree, yeah, those probably result in more moral people.
Okay. And I know you talked a little about this before, but I mean, if you want to kind of recap or add more to this, but what are your thoughts about the world today in its current state? Do you think the world is more utopian or dystopian at this moment?
Yeah, I think we're verging on dystopian right now with everything that's going on with AI,
Mhm.
and just all kinds of like, and I think bioengineering as well is verging on dystopian. I
Mhm.
think we're giving the government around the world more and more power, more and more ways to manipulate people, especially with the internet, especially with all kinds of technology. We are giving them better ways to create propaganda and just like make
Mhm.
people agree with them, right? Like
Mhm.
look at North Korea, how that one works, right? Like I
Mhm.
think that's we definitely have the more potential to manipulate. But I think right now, where we're living at least in like America and most European countries, they
Mhm.
do. I would argue they are more utopian now.
Yeah.
We do care more about other people. We do have this sense of equity where we want everyone to thrive. We want everyone to succeed. Whereas before, it's kind of like every dog for himself, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's like I keep saying, time will tell. Like I'm just everyone's here
Yeah.
waiting. Like like it's a movie. What's gonna happen next?
Yeah. Bro, I'm on the edge of my seat. Like I wake up every day, like look up, like, dude, did any new wars start over the weekend? No, okay, we're good, we're good. No new wars, great.
And this is an
But yeah.
election year, so just
Oh my God,
get your
yeah, that's
popcorn
so
ready.
true. That's so true.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm excited. I'm excited. Yeah. Uh,
So two more questions before we close out here, Theo.
okay.
First, if you had to give the world, or give the world a new goal to work on for this year in 2024, what
Mm.
would it be?
I think the most important thing to like help you be happy in a way, or at least feel fulfilled, is recognize your potential, right? Like put down on a piece of paper like everything you think is good about yourself, right? Everything you're proud of, and look at how you can help other people with that, right? I think that's such a vanilla thing, right? Like, oh,
Mhm.
you should help other people, but at least for me, like when I was like really not doing well mentally, and just like on the verge of like all kinds of like harming myself kind of things, right?
Mhm.
I just looked at it and was like, okay, like if I were to die today, right? What would that like good do for society, right? Like I would be happier, I guess. I wouldn't be in pain anymore. But at the
Mm.
same time, like the amount of pain I cause everyone else and just the like what I would be stealing from the world, right? All the potential I have, I'd be
Mhm.
taking that away from the world. And so would it be better for me to just say like, okay, I might live in pain now. I might live in pain in the rest of my life, but at least I can provide happiness and benefits for everyone else because I've been given these gifts, right? This
Yeah.
potential. And I think that's true for everyone. I think everyone has like insane potential that if they do tap into, if they do focus on, they can
Mhm.
do fantastic, like great things. I just
Right.
think it's like a matter of do you want to? And a lot of it is like apathy. If you're happy in your own life, then that's great, but you'll become apathetic. If you're not happy in your own life, if you're depressed a lot, I do think that does push you to the verge of like, I must become something greater for
Mhm.
myself, for others, for all kinds of things. And so I think if you're kind of on that verge of like, I don't want to live anymore, I'm just in that pace all the time. I think looking at it and be like, what can I offer the world? Um,
Right.
I think
Mm.
that will help you out of it.
Yeah. But no, Theo, we need you here. We need your intelligence. We need your
Yeah,
knowledge.
true. That's what I said. I was like, I'm just so smart. I can't take away that from the world. Come on. Yeah.
And lastly, what's next for you? Anything exciting coming up this year, or you
Ooh.
know?
Next for me, I'm just gonna continue trying to pump out videos. I have a bunch of essays I have written down, so
Mhm.
The editing process is a grind. I absolutely despise that, but other than that, I'm having fun with it. I'm enjoying it. I'm having a lot of. I don't know if you see my channel, but I have open to like you can talk to me on Discord anytime, and I've
Mm,
been having people email me and say like, "Hey, let's talk about theology. Let's talk about philosophy, whatever."
mm.
And I'm enjoying those talks a lot. They're so fun.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, definitely you
yeah.
get like I mean, you keep it up because those 3 videos, like your first 3 videos, I was like, whoa, this channel.
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you
I was
so
like,
much. I appreciate
wow,
that.
like from start to
Yeah.
finish, I was like mind blown. At least for me, like I'm not even joking either. Like,
Okay, that's so kind. Thank you. Because like
yeah,
sometimes I do feel like is this dumb? Like I'm saying fairness is good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. Like that makes sense. Okay, I don't know even
mm.
know why I made this video, but I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, 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 definitely. I feel like other people could gain a lot. Like, it's all
Mhm.
about gaining a new perspective. That's how like I
Right.
feel like we evolve as a society.
I I
So,
definitely agree with that. I think like less than like just me giving information like my views, I think it also pushes people to think like, what do I think about this? How do I define fairness? And like that
mm,
helps them in their own life. Even if I'm not giving them the definition, they have their
mm-hmm.
own definition going forward.
Right, right, right. Yeah, definitely. So thank you so much, Theo, once again for taking the time to share your voice. Share your thoughts, and I
Yeah.
hope to continue to see you do more great things along your YouTube journey. You got a new channel. I feel like you're heading towards the right direction, and I feel like you got a good niche. You have a great theme, and you
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
you have your like college experience and what you're learning and your major to back that up, because I feel like that's your ethos, your credibility, right? Because
Oh, yeah, yeah,
it's
absolutely. I agree with
it's
that. Yeah.
like, okay, how does this guy knows all this stuff on this channel? It's like, well, he's
I made it
studying
up. I
it.
made it all up.
Yeah, he just made it all
Yeah.
up. Like,
Yeah, yeah, it's all fake, okay? Yeah. No, I appreciate you so much.
hmm
This is amazing. Giving people a platform to
yeah,
talk. I love hearing I'm gonna have to go through that schizophrenic person you're talking about because I love hearing different
hmm
ideas.
yeah.
That's so exciting though. So
hmm
thank you so much for hosting me. That's amazing.
Yeah, and thanks to anyone who tuned in. Make sure to check out Theological Dissent's channel if you want to learn more about him and his thoughts on different topics. He's great. He's starting out, so you know, feel free. I mean, knowledge is free. Why not? Take it in.
Yeah, that's
so
so true. Yeah.
all right,
All right.
guys. Hope you guys enjoy this conversation. Please, please, please like, share, subscribe. His channel will be down below, and yeah, feel free to share your thoughts. We said a lot of interesting things here, so I'll see you guys in the next one, and take care. Peace.